Silver Creek, Texas, had never looked more alive than it did that autumn evening in 1889. Lanterns hung from wooden posts across the town square, casting warm golden light over the wedding celebration. Horses were tied outside the hall while laughter and fiddle music drifted through the dusty streets. Inside, townsfolk filled every table, raising glasses and sharing stories about the newly married couple. Clara Bennett stood beside Ethan Cole in a simple ivory dress, greeting each guest with grace and patience. Though the hall buzzed with joy, Clara could already feel the sharp eyes of Ethan's wealthy relatives studying her quietly from across the room. Clara came from a hard-working ranch family outside town, while Ethan's relatives owned cattle businesses stretching across Texas. To many of them, Clara was too ordinary for the Cole family name. Yet she carried herself with calm dignity, never trying to impress anyone. As she smiled politely at guests, whispers floated through the room. Some women admired her beauty, while others questioned whether she belonged among the wealthy Coles. Clara heard enough to understand their thoughts, but she refused to let their opinions ruin the happiest night of her life. Her mother had taught her long ago that confidence spoke louder than pride. At the center of the largest table sat Walter Cole, Ethan's uncle, a man feared almost as much as he was respected. Walter was known throughout Silver Creek for his sharp tongue, expensive suits, and belief that money gave him authority over everyone around him. He leaned back in his chair, swirling whiskey in his glass as he watched Clara closely. To him, ranch girls belonged in kitchens and fields, not beside a man carrying the Cole family legacy. He had stayed silent most of the evening, but the longer the celebration continued, the more irritated he became by Clara's quiet confidence. Ethan noticed his uncle watching them but chose to ignore it. He hoped the night would pass peacefully without arguments or embarrassment. Clara sensed Ethan's nervousness every time Walter shifted in his chair, yet she remained composed. The musicians played lively tunes while waiters carried plates of roasted meat and fresh bread between crowded tables. For a few moments, the celebration almost felt perfect. Children laughed near the dance floor, couples spun beneath lantern light, and the smell of smoked barbecue filled the hall. But beneath the warmth of the evening, tension quietly gathered like a desert storm waiting to break. Walter finally stood from his chair, raising his whiskey glass high enough to command attention. Slowly, conversations faded across the hall until only the crackling lantern flames and distant fiddle music remained. Ethan stiffened beside Clara. He already knew the look in his uncle's eyes, the look that usually came before humiliation. Walter cleared his throat dramatically, smiling in a way that felt more mocking than friendly. "Well," he announced loudly, "I suppose we should all congratulate Ethan on his new bride." Guests nodded politely, uncertain where his speech was heading. Clara remained still, her hands folded calmly before her. Walter turned toward Clara directly, his grin widening. "But I have to ask something first." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Even the musicians slowed their playing. Walter tilted his head slightly, studying her as though examining livestock at auction. "Can you cook?" he asked loudly. A few startled laughs escaped nearby tables. Walter continued before anyone could interrupt. "Or did Ethan marry you just because you're pretty?" The insult echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Some guests looked away in embarrassment while others waited eagerly for Clara's reaction. Ethan's face burned red, but no words came from his mouth. For a long moment, silence consumed the room. Clara could feel every eye fixed on her, waiting for anger, tears, or humiliation. Yet inside, she felt strangely calm. She remembered the countless mornings spent beside her mother at the ranch stove, learning not only recipes but patience, discipline, and dignity. Her mother often said that cruel people revealed more about themselves than their victims ever could. Clara lifted her gaze toward Walter steadily. She noticed Ethan avoiding her eyes, ashamed yet unwilling to challenge his uncle publicly. That hurt more deeply than Walter's insult ever could. Several guests shifted awkwardly in their seats. Ethan's younger cousins stared at Clara with sympathy, while older relatives watched carefully, almost hoping she would lose control and prove Walter right. But Clara simply breathed slowly and straightened her shoulders. The lantern light reflected softly in her calm eyes. Walter smirked, believing his question had already won him the room. He expected silence or defensiveness from her. Instead, Clara surprised everyone by smiling gently. There was no bitterness in her expression, no visible anger, only quiet confidence. That unexpected composure unsettled Walter more than any sharp reply could have. "Well," Clara finally said softly, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall, "tomorrow morning, you'll have your answer." Murmurs spread instantly among the guests. Some looked confused while others exchanged curious smiles. Walter raised an eyebrow, uncertain whether she had accepted his challenge or dismissed it entirely. Clara gave no further explanation. She simply stepped closer to Ethan and rested her hand lightly on his arm. The calm certainty in her voice lingered in the air long after she finished speaking. Even the musicians hesitated before cautiously beginning to play again, trying to restore life to the uncomfortable celebration. Ethan leaned toward Clara quietly once conversations resumed. "You didn't have to answer him," he whispered apologetically. Clara looked at him for a moment, sadness flickering briefly behind her composed expression. "Maybe you should have answered him," she replied gently. Ethan lowered his eyes, unable to deny the truth in her words. Across the hall, Walter laughed with several businessmen as though nothing serious had happened, but many guests now viewed him differently. His cruelty had crossed a line even for Silver Creek society. Meanwhile, Clara continued greeting people politely, refusing to allow one man's arrogance to destroy her dignity. As the evening stretched later into the night, whispers about Clara's mysterious response spread through the hall faster than wildfire. Some believed she planned to embarrass Walter publicly. Others assumed she would ignore the insult entirely by morning. But Clara already knew exactly what she intended to do. Long after the dancing ended and guests began leaving beneath the cool Texas night sky, her calm smile remained unchanged. Yet deep inside, determination burned stronger than ever. By sunrise, everyone in Silver Creek, including Walter Cole, would finally understand that true worth could never be measured by wealth, beauty, or cruel opinions alone.